Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. We actually will throw a breaking tag on this CENTCOM, that being Central Command in charge of operations in the Middle East and the Mediterranean, has claimed the strike on several Iranian targets on today, Friday, June 26th, as a, quote, powerful response to yesterday's attack on a Singapore commercial ship that was transiting the Strait of Hormuz. So as some of you may recall, yesterday we were able to report on some threats made by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, in which they called all of the ships and said, now, before you cross the Strait of Hormuz, you need to, your mom's credit card number, your dad's maiden name, your second goat's license plate. You have to register all of those with us by fax, teletext. Here was that announcement as it went out to all of the ships in the nearby area.
Attention all vessels, attention all vessels, attention all vessels in Persian Gulf and Oman Sea. This is SEPA Navy warning. Transiting in the Strait of Hormuz is only possible with SEPA Navy permission and on designated routes.
Always great when your big, huge radio authoritative message comes from a guy who I'm pretty sure was trying to scam me out of a Microsoft login earlier in the day. And then they threw an Iranian suicide drone at the bridge of a Singapore trade vessel. They didn't sink the trade vessel. The vessel's fine. There weren't any casualties. But the president of the United States was rather miffed about it. And this afternoon, he provided this statement when CBS prompted him on whether or not there would be a response in the Middle East, because there was this memorandum of understanding that is kind of in front of the entire country and the world. Here's the president.
You said that Iran violated the ceasefire. Will they face any consequences?
Well, you'll find out.
You'll find out. And that's always a very interesting statement and a response from the president of the United States, because if you have ever listened to President Trump, especially in the last couple of decades, because the man doesn't change, when he says something like, you'll find out, the rifles are already loaded, the pilots are already in the associative cockpits, engines are getting warm. And sure enough...
Do you consider the ceasefire to still be in place?
I don't like the fact that they took a shot yesterday, actually 4, we knocked down 3, at a ship. Not an Allied ship, but a ship, a very expensive ship. And it was fine, but it took a little beating. They shouldn't be doing that, so you'll find out.
Will the U.S.
You'll find out.
Will the U.S. respond? What is your message to Iran?
Respond, you're going to find out.
Sir, why do you think they did that if the talks, you've said repeatedly they're going well? What do you think the motivation is for Iran in attacking a ship?
They're a little bit different. That's why I think of it. 47 years, no president did what we're doing. So you just asked a question, you'll find out. Okay.
So there you go. I mean, that's the president so far, making, again, those statements, making those particular points. Now, moving forward, because this does matter quite a bit, there's a whole lot to dive into on a separate deal from the Lebanese government as well as the Israelis, because the Iranians are trying to claim that they had to strike the ship from Singapore because Israel was still operating against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Now, as for where the United States has retaliated this evening, actually showing you some of the B-roll footage we have, an explosion was reported over an hour ago now near the Iranian coastal city of Sirik, near the Strait of Hormuz. That's according to Iranian state media. Since then, the United States Central Command has announced that forces conducted strikes against Iran as a powerful response to yesterday's attack on a commercial ship transiting the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. aircraft struck Iranian missile and drone storage locations and coastal radar sites after Iran hit the ship known as the Ever Lovely, that would be the Singapore ship, on June 25th with a one-way attack drone. And the ship was just exiting the Strait of Hormuz along the Omani coast at the time of Iran's attack. Now, there are a couple of questions that people have asked. If the United States knows where some of the drone storage facilities, other radar facilities are, why is it that these were allowed to stay standing? Well, according to prior statements from the President of the United States, for example, in a very recent rally he said, well, Iran wants to make a deal. They want to make a deal very badly. Here was the president just earlier.
And then everyone said, no, thank you. It's amazing. And then the fake news, like the New York Times, which is a failing publication. But the fake news, ABC, so bad. ABC television network, fake ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN. They actually said for a little while, it didn't play well, that Iran was much stronger today than it was 4 months ago. Think of it. They have no navy. They have no... They said they're stronger. They're dying to make a deal. They're giving us a lot. They should have been done over the 47-year period that they've reigned with terror. And that's what they did. They reigned with terror. When you see a young...
All right, so the President of the United States, clearly, regarding this whole memorandum of understanding set up by the Vice President of the United States, something has fallen apart here very, very quickly. Now, this brings us over to what the counterpart, or I should say, in this case, kind of the foreign policy opposite of the Vice President, Secretary of State, Acting National Security Advisor, Chief Capitol Architect, the Chief National Archivist, second right hand to the Pope, possibly the next coach of the Miami Dolphins, Marco Rubio. Well, what's he been up to? Well, he's been brokering a major deal between the Lebanese government, of which a couple of their members of the Lebanese government would be members of Hezbollah, the terrorist organization that has killed U.S. Marines, many American citizens, etc. And Israel has been fighting them in southern Lebanon because Hezbollah's launched rockets and a number of other munitions into northern Israel, as well as, slaughtering, raping, and killing more than just a few Christians, Jews, Druze, Sikhs, moderate Muslims inside of both southern Lebanon and northern Israel. So Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, announced today there's kind of a different framework being set up for future cooperation between the Israelis as well as the Lebanese. And it matters very much so here to the Iranians because, well, you don't have to take my word for it. Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf has made it explicitly clear this is where all of the attention goes. This is what everything is all about. And if Israel doesn't stop fighting Hezbollah, then Iran is going to keep fighting everyone. Anyway, here's Rubio announcing this deal framework today.
Today is a good day in that we're happy to announce a framework agreement between the sovereign government of Lebanon and of course the government of Israel with a mediation and support of the United States of America that begins to put in place a framework for lasting peace and security. And that's what these two nations deserve. The people of Lebanon have suffered tremendously now for decades as a result of outside interference in their affairs, of countries trying to use the country as a launch pad for attacks. And this is not what the people of Lebanon want, and that's not what they deserve. What they deserve to have is what they once had, and of which there is recent history of, and that is a prosperous and peaceful country.
There you go. That's the statement from Marco Rubio on that. Now, the response to this has been incredible. So first of all, the kind of pro-Islamist media, I'm talking about Al Jazeera here, their framing of this said that according to Rubio, the Israeli-Lebanon deal creates a process for the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah, meaning that the Lebanese government would directly be intervening against the radical Islamic terror organization and working with the United States to commit resources to future humanitarian assistance, as well as the Lebanese army working directly with both Israel and the United States, which is a major, major change over the last couple of decades. And so what happened? Well, a couple of things. So first of all, and as of right now, this is continuing, there's chaos in Beirut. Complete chaos as Hezbollah is taken to the street. They're lighting fires. They're doing all other kinds of stuff. Here you go. This is in Beirut in Lebanon right now. And it's truly insane what's going on. Radio crew, we're going to send you guys to the commercial. We're going to continue over here on the live stream side. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, and first on 93 WIBC. All right, while the radio crew is over in the commercial side of things, we're going to continue on the live stream. There are a few people who are really desperately outraged and angry. So the socialist, Islamist left, those who are on the very far left, the Balisandas kind of people, they're very, very, very angry that Marco Rubio walked into Lebanon and walked into Israel and brokered a pretty significant deal that cuts Islamic terror groups out of the region. And of course, they're angry because they see violent revolution is as the only way forward whatsoever. So one of these individuals who has an IQ of a kumquat that's been moldering in the sun would be Rania Khalek. She's a broadcaster for the Breakthrough News outlet, which is yet another one of the kind of socialist agitprop outlets for the international community. So she's very, very angry at this. A lot of gnashing of teeth, renting of the sackcloth. She says, quote, "It's incredible that the Lebanese government refused to use the leverage bestowed on them by Iran's insistence on a ceasefire and Israelis' withdrawal from southern Lebanon." So what I love right at the beginning is that it all comes back to the real reason for Iran losing their ever-loving minds. Iran, like China, has been cut out of the Middle East and the world. And as they are being cut out of the Middle East and the world, those who were counting on China manipulating the world through the Belt and Road Initiative, and those who were counting on Iran being able to threaten, cajole, kill, steal, rape, plunder, murder, etc., are now frustrated. And so they're openly admitting that any and all actions of Iran are only to try to desperately maintain their hold on the most violent regimes on earth. Just instead, they chose to collaborate with Americans. You're darn right they did. Anyway, and Israelis on Israel's terms to hand Marco Rubio a tool to undermine the U.S.-Iran agreement. So Marco Rubio is undermining himself by getting the actual Lebanese government. If you're thinking that none of this at all makes any sense, you'd be correct. Apparently, the Lebanese government, which signs an agreement with Israel against a terrorist group operating in the country, undermines an agreement between Iran and this is ridiculous. I mean, it is truly and clearly the silliest thing that you could possibly fathom, the outrage over this. Quote, Netanyahu is bragging that this is a withdrawal because part of the agreement is Israel would withdraw through essentially two areas he doesn't care about, and then allows Israel's occupation to continue. No, it allows Israel to co-occupy with the Lebanese army certain areas of Lebanon to pass out humanitarian aid and root out the people who are doing, this. I can't possibly fathom. And again, we've seen this before. In the last couple of weeks, you've seen Lebanese, mostly moderate Muslims, because there's not very many Christians at all left inside Lebanon, who have been fighting Hezbollah actively. We have another clip now I'm just now finding here. As the Hezbollah terrorists are trying to block the road, people are trying to get through. There are fights breaking out. There are fists being thrown. This release of hands is in fact rated E for everyone. And it's not slowing down. Again, none of this is going to slow down because there is no group, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran, whether it's some of the ethnic groups in Pakistan or Afghanistan or the Taliban or Al-Qaeda, whatever. None of those groups are willing to negotiate or have the capacity to hold to any kind of an agreement whatsoever. Any kind at all. Absolutely none. So now the Iranian state media has now suggested that the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is targeting several locations where U.S. forces are deployed in the region. Now, I've heard this one before. You've heard this one before. Right? I mean, come on now. Like, we have heard this very same thing time and time again. We'll cover more information on that later. We have more news to cover. Got to bring the radio crew back in from the commercial break. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. Let's dive into the absolute mess that is Congress here in the United States. So again, the House is having a fantastic fun fit because the Senate is doing absolutely nothing. And as we've said on the show here before, the reason that the Senate is doing absolutely nothing is that there are about 7 establishment Republican senators. For example, Mitch McConnell from Kentucky and Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who are retiring and they don't care. They won't do anything. Then you have Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins from Alaska and Maine, respectively, who are rather useless as a rule. And then, of course, depending on this kind of a, sometimes why vowel situation where you've got Bill Cassidy and you have Rand Paul and then you have John Cornyn. And those three Republican senators are sometimes useful, sometimes they just kind of throw a fit, depending on the issue. So the Save America Act, which is a voter ID piece of legislation, a few other pieces of things with it. It's a very important piece of legislation for the Trump administration. It's a very important piece of legislation for the Congress of the United States, especially in the House. And it's a very important and popular piece of legislation by its terms and proposed policies with the American people. 71 to 75% of American people are very in favor of the terms proposed by the Save America Act. And that brings us to one of the wildest headlines that those who are watching live can see on the Chiron. That is that John Thune is facing censure from the South Dakota Republican Party. That's wild because John Thune, he's the majority leader of the Senate. He's the headest of honchos in charge of the Republicans on the Senate side. So what's the issue? Well, the issue is that Senate Majority Leader John Thune kind of came around a couple of weeks ago to saying the reason the Save America Act isn't passing is because we don't have the votes. And so instead of being asked why and then answering that question why, which shouldn't be too hard to do, he's kind of skirted it and avoided it and kind of hustled off and run away. And that's bothered a lot of people in the United States because some people have said, well, then who's the problem? Who's the fault? And the answer is, as we've already talked about, if you don't meet the 60 vote threshold to reach cloture and not have to deal with the filibuster, if you can't meet the 60 vote threshold, then that means you either have to do the talking filibuster or you have to get rid of the filibuster entirely, which you can do with a simple majority. And Thune is not willing to do that. And the reason Thune is not willing to bring up either of those is that it would force those 7 establishment Republicans to then go on the record about that and could make Susan Collins very, very, very unpopular so that Republicans don't come out to vote for her and you get Graham Plattner in Maine. That's the calculus that I would almost bet balls to bones he's making. He's not threatening or withholding committee assignments. There are also some questions about sending the Senate to a not quite recess adjournment situation. And so not just Americans in general, but Republicans in South Dakota are very, 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 very upset with Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who went with Secretary of Homeland Security Mark Wayne Mullen to go view a couple of things in the Dakotas and stopped through in South Dakota, kind of took a look around, kind of checked out some things. And then there was this convention event because this is the time of year when you have Republican conventions in various states. And so it was time for the South Dakota Republican Party convention. And one of the individuals that planned to show up and ask Senate Majority Leader John Thune about some of these questions was Scott Presler. So Scott Presler, he is an individual who has registered more Republicans in various states single-handedly than any other individual I could possibly name in the last couple of years. He goes to purple states and he advocates tirelessly to get people to register to join the Republican Party. He's a very effective tool for the GOP. And he also advocates on behalf of certain election integrity reform, whether that's redistricting in various states. So much so was his campaign successful in the state of Indiana that it ended the entire political careers of several Indiana state senators who refused to pass redistricting measures. They lost their primaries. It's one of the first, in fact, one of the worst incumbent nights for a wing of the state legislature that I think has been seen in U.S. history. So that's Scott Presler. He goes up to South Dakota, and I say up to because obviously I'm here broadcasting from Indiana. And he says, hey, I'm here. He has a little name badge, the little press ribbon thing he stuck to the bottom of it, and says, hey, I'm here at the South Dakota Republican Party State Convention in Rapid City. And then things got really weird and awkward because this dude shows up, this Matt Bruner guy shows up and starts, I believe the quote is telling Scott Presler to, quote, get the hell out of here.
Hey guys, this is Scott Presler. I'm here at the South Dakota State Convention. I have a ticket, and they are saying that I can't come in. So we're going to find out very shortly why I am not being allowed as one of the biggest supporters of President Donald J. Trump.
I'm big on Facebook too, and I'm the asshole saying you can't come in because guess what? You're posting this little piss and moan session on Facebook.
Okay. So this guy who I've never heard of before, this Matt Bruner guy says, hey, I'm big on Facebook too. Which is probably the lamest dunk that I could fathom bringing up at all. And the man's got a whopping 12,000 followers. Now, as a guy who has, at this point, I think, more than 12,000 followers, if you're bragging about 12,000 followers, you need to go outside and touch some grass. But anywho, this is like the South Dakota guys. Like, you got to get out of here because you're posting it on Facebook that you're being removed. And again, Presler's asking question, I bought a ticket. I'm supposed to be here. Why am I not allowed in? This has to do with Senate Majority Leader Thune, as you've already guessed. But we'll get there.
So you just get the hell out of here. Thank you.
You see how the grassroots are welcomed and.
All right, so he gets thrown out. Now, he does actually go ask around and say, hey, what's actually going on here? So I should point out one more time that now crying on social media is Matt Bruner because people are, making fun of him and, going after him and saying, you're kind of gross, that kind of social media stuff. Now, that brings us over to what actually happened. And of course, you may have guessed what happened. According to the party officials at the event who are gatekeeping, so basically the individuals who are filmed on video saying, yeah, Scott Presler wasn't allowed in. In fact, by the way, when I say Scott Presler wasn't allowed in, there's actually a video clip of like his face on a poster heading into the event. I think of this maybe clip 11 here. Yeah, if you zoom in,
so this is James by a lot of.
You can actually see they passed out a little poster with a picture of Scott's face on it to the bouncers so that he wouldn't be allowed in the building. So who was the responsible individual for this? Well, according to the officials who didn't want Scott Presler in to ask about the Save America Act, it was Senate Majority Leader John Thune himself.
You say, did John Thune specifically ask that Scott Presler not attend this event?
Yes.
Okay, is John Thune a member of the convention committee?
No.
So John Thune said I couldn't come in. The guy says yes. And it's like, but is Thune a member of the committee? Meaning, like, just because you're a senator doesn't mean you get to kick someone out of the convention. And here comes the response following it, kind of doubling down and confirming things.
So how does he have the authority to remove people from events?
He asked nicely.
Oh, he asked nicely. Ah, okay. So confirming multiple different ways here. Again, according to these individuals that are running the state convention, Scott Presler is not allowed inside. And you say, Tony, none of this really matters to me. Why do I care that Jim Eschenbaum didn't, followed Senate Majority Leader Thune's question to not allow Scott Presler inside? Well, why? Well, because of two reasons. Number one, because Republicans are in a very weird place getting everyone in line. A lot of establishment members of the Republican Senate kind of look a little nervous right now. You have Tom Tillis sweating, again, who's retiring. He shouldn't have to care. It's the Democrat Party, as we're going to get to in a second, who is currently splitting, fracturing. You have 10 Democrats who are completely refusing to work with Mamdani. It's a huge mess. And then on the Republican side, you have a Republican state party who is willing to censure Thune for a reason we're going to get to here in just a minute. That's why Thune did not want Scott Presler to be in on this event, because Presler is going to ask right up front, right in his face, hey, why not do X, Y, and Z to get the Save America Act rolling? I know you say, well, we don't have the numbers. So tell me what you can do to move this thing forward a little bit here. We're going to get into that on the live stream a bit. Radio crew will catch you guys on the other side of the commercial break. That's right, guys. It's junior high slapping fight drama nonsense. And you're the adults in the room. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, for those who have been around a while and you've tuned into my show once or twice, you will know that I have a lot of contempt for the staffers that people hire. And I say that knowing that there are a lot of staffers for various House and Senate members on the right and the left that do tune into the show. So you know what I'm talking about. There are staffers that are hired to positions who think that they are God's gift to the U.S. Capitol building and the office buildings surrounding it. And it just so happens that because they got a political science degree, which if you're proud of your political science degree, okay. All right. That all said, when we get up to my personal favorite of why a lot of these individuals are ridiculous, they make everything worse by believing that if they're really condescending and they just make stuff up, no one else will care and no one will catch it. That may have worked back in 08 and 09 when there really, really wasn't a good opportunity to actually fact check a lot of these people and no one would care. Now in the age of everyone having social media, you really can't get away with that anymore. So that brings us to Ryan Rass. So Ryan Rass is he runs comms, or is on the communication staff for Senate Majority Leader John Thune himself. Now, if you are in office, I would like to ask you something very specific. If you are currently in office and you have a staff member, a comms staffer, who comes up to you and says, we got to get ahead of this. Oh, things are looking bad online. Quick, you know what you need? Let me get out on Twitter. Tell that person to shut up, sit down, and in fact, suspend them from the weekend. If you have anyone who's on crisis PR, there is this stupid idea that you got to get ahead of it, man. You got to get out there and you got to just start commenting about it. No, you don't. Do not do that. Don't. Bad idea. So of course, Ryan Rass from Senate Majority Leader John Thune's office decides, what if I shoot myself and my guy in the foot? So he gets out there. Well, John Thune is getting roasted online completely and utterly. So his comm staffer finally says, okay, I've seen enough. This is a categorical lie to make an embarrassing situation seem better by blaming people who had absolutely nothing to do with this. John Thune's staff doesn't run ticketing checks at the South Dakota GOP dinner doors. Give me a break. But you have already seen all of the videos that show that people in the convention are saying, John Thune asked us to just not let you in. And then he doubled down. He said, well, the event was closed to the press. And actually, that's why Scott Presler was not allowed in the event. Because he's press. Well, Scott Presler's not really, he had the little ribbon on. The dude's not necessarily like corporate press. Get out of here. And then finally, he really buries the whole thing. This is bad. Now, is this going to force Thune into a really rough spot here in a week or so? Honestly, yeah. Yeah, you are giving everyone in the country the room to box in the Senate Majority Leader and likely force the man onto the record at some point here. So Ryan Rass just goes out. He is roasted so heavily for this. Why? Because they're just they appear to be downright lies. He says it wasn't a Thune event. It was hosted by the GOP. No one's, saying that's not true. He says 0 Thune staff were working at the doors. No one's refuting that. And then said John Thune did not tell anyone that they couldn't enter, period. But according to the staff at the South Dakota GOP, the same staff who was refusing to let Scott Presler in to ask about the SAVE Act, the answer is yes. And again, the reason it matters is that Republicans have not let this drop. It's really remarkable because Republicans usually get bored of an event and we move from one scandal to the next scandal and everyone's really aggravated about the next thing. Republicans are holding very firmly to this. And there's been a lot of gaslighting attempts that aren't quite working. But never fear, because it gets so much worse and then so much better. We got to bring the radio crew back. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
All right, we're heading into the midterm. This is where everyone lines up together and we march forward with some plans and some policies and some proposals, and then you get people out to vote. It is now the end of quarter 2. It is Friday, June 26th. Next week is July. The midterms are approaching. We are getting into the second half of a major election year. And both parties are having serious problems. Now, both parties are having really different problems, which is very, very weird and not at all usual. Normally, it's the Democrats who might be having a slight issue with one thing in party leadership, and it's the Republicans who are at open civil war with each other. The Libertarians are yelling at the establishment, who's yelling at the populists, who's yelling at the traditional conservatives, and it's a whole fricassee. That's not what's going on. It's kind of the reverse. Democrats are falling into 8 different categories and are just completely falling apart. Again, not at a time when the Trump administration's rocking uber tons of momentum, unless that which comes from the Supreme Court, which is again also very weird. Usually it's the Supreme Court that's taking the air out of a presidential administration sails, not the other way around. This is bizarro world to the 10th degree. Now, again, I said, in the meantime, you have the Republican Party. So again, Senate Majority Leader John Thune is facing censorship from his own party. And why? The South Dakota Republican Committee, in a unanimous vote for the censure of the Senate Majority Leader of the Republican, like the headest honcho of Republicans next to the Speaker of the House. His own state party committee just passed a unanimous censure of him. Why? Because he's not doing anything with the Save America Act. Here's that vote. This is pretty incredible to watch.
1-2, the censure of Senator Thune with a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. This motion carries.
So they did themselves a little account, and yep, the vote carries. And now the vote is going to head, again, right in the middle of their convention, to a general censure vote before the South Dakota Republican Party. So the resolution title, rebuking Senator John Thune for his performance as U.S. Senate Majority Leader. Again, to see Republicans holding leadership accountable in this way is unreal. We've never seen anything like this before. You really actually haven't seen a state's own GOP holding their senator accountable. Again, revoke the 17th Amendment to the United States. That's why it's very important. The censure would last until the Save America Act becomes law. And the whereas statements are truly damning. Quote, whereas an overwhelming majority of citizens, not just from South Dakota, but the entire USA, support the passage of the Save America Act. Whereas the state government of South Dakota has already passed its own version of the Save America Act. Whereas the necessity of the Save America Act has been demonstrated by rampant election fraud across the entire nation, most blatantly, but by no means limited to California. Nice. Whereas the failure to pass the Save America Act threatens election integrity across the U.S., undermines U.S. citizens' trust in the electoral process, and because South Dakota voted for Trump no less than 3 times, and essentially says this is Trump's top priority, get it together. Says he's wantonly and repeatedly acted as a roadblock. That's a capital oof. That's a capital oof. Now, what does this mean? It means that you're going to see far more in a way Republicans in the broader part of the party, including the President of the United States, who normally doesn't go after specific senators. And they say, well, yeah, he does. He goes after like a senator who he's complaining about, like, for example, in a primary race. No. On policy issues, it is usually taboo for a president to criticize their own senators directly. Again, you don't normally see senators or representatives who are calling out individual senators. It's so unusual. Again, usually that's a Democrat thing, who call out Schumer, who call out Hakeem Jeffries. So here's President Trump yesterday, I believe. It could be today. I don't have the exact date on this particular rally. Naming Lisa Murkowski, saying that she's never going to be elected again. Quite garbage-tastic. Here's President Trump.
And now we have to pass the Save America Act to protect our sacred American elections. Have to pass it. Hard to believe, right? Hard to believe that we even have to fight for this. We have to fight for everything. Nothing comes easy. Nothing. All voters must show photo ID. Not so bad, right? All voters must provide proof of citizenship. Is that so hard? And you're fighting the Democrats and a few Republicans who are doing a tremendous disservice to this country. We have a few Republicans that are fighting it. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. You should call her and tell her to get on the ball. She'll never win another election, I can tell you. She's got to vote.
Now, that kind of a thing. You also have Republicans over in the House, Representative Scott Perry, a friend of the show as well, who's also kind of trying to go on the warpath about this. We don't usually see this kind of momentum hold in place when there's not really progress past the Senate that's being made.
But the American people sent all of us here to get something done. And the American people know what time it is, right? They just watched what happened in New York City. They watched what happened in Los Angeles. They're watching communists take over. They're watching Sharia law being affected and implemented across their country.
Now you say, why does this matter, Tony? I may not live in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as great as it may be. At least what the Pennsylvania people like producer Lou keep telling me. Why does this matter? Because the Republicans are making a national argument. Guys, Republicans don't make national arguments in the midterms. Not when they're the majority party. And here you have the House of Representatives and the Republicans who are rallying against 7 Republicans, 8 Republicans, depending on the day, in the Senate. And then the Democrats are calling out saying they're electing communists, they're electing Islamists, they're electing LGBTQ plus 2IA nutcases, they're electing racists. They're electing guys who have allegedly abused women and maybe were chatting with minors on the #1 predator minor messaging service up until like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Republicans are gaining momentum with people on this. Republicans aren't supposed to have unified messaging. That's not how this is supposed to go. Not in an off. You're not in a midterm.
They know what time it is. And they sent people here to do something about that. And we're doing our level best in the House of Representatives with a small majority to try and deliver for the American people.
Now, I usually love fact-checking statements like this. We're doing our best in the House of Representatives is a sentence that no one has been able to say since the very first couple of years that Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House. The House of Representatives has not as a whole been useful for the majority of our republic's history. But when he says that the House of Representatives has been doing work, survey says that's absolutely freaking correct. The House has passed, again, with a very slim majority. Speaker Mike Johnson, as far as effectiveness as a House leader, has passed more bills out of the House with this narrow of a majority than we've ever seen. And I'm the first guy lining up to criticize the House of Representatives. So if Republicans are incredibly unified, what about the Democrats? Oh, the biggest of yikes. The biggest of yikes that one could find. The Democrats are charging into a dumpster fire. So Zohran Mamdani, who is just naturally assumed after 2 elections that he's now the leader of the party, and he's correct, because the media is all just following after him and licking his feet. Zohran Mamdani, the former rapper and now the New York City mayor, has decided that after the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that the President of the United States, who has the authority to grant temporary protected status under the law passed by Congress, also has the authority to end temporary protected status under the law as the president, because that's the law and it's temporary. Zohran Mamdani has come out and announced that, well, he's going to buck not just the president, not just the law, but the Supreme Court of the United States. Said the Supreme Court launched one of the largest attacks on immigrants in modern American history. Thousands of Haitians and Syrians now risk losing the right to live and work in the country they call home. It'll cause enormous pain across the 5 boroughs. And here in New York, it falls hardest on our Haitian community, one of the largest in the country. By the way, as I pointed out yesterday, the man has none of if these Haitian migrants, the temporary protected status people, if they're so special, I thought maybe he would have mentioned them before now, or maybe there would be 1 or 2 at least on his staff. Nope. Not at all. But anywho, he's now moved forward with essentially declaring that New York City is going to become a sanctuary city, not for illegal immigrants, handled on a case-by-case basis, but just going to illegally host individuals in the country whose temporary grant of stay here in the United States has been legally, lawfully, duly, and through all due process revoked. Truly insane. Here's the openly radical mayor of New York City.
We saw today the Supreme Court make a decision that is putting so many people's lives in jeopardy.
I like this, the so many lives in jeopardy thing. We'll get to this in a second. Radio crew, I'm sorry. I'm getting an eye full of the FCC clock. I got to send you guys off to commercial break before I enjoy a fine that no one's going to give me sanctuary from. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We're going to continue on the live stream. So as Zohran was saying, he said, this is going to put lives in jeopardy. There is a certain sweet Alanis Morissette kind of irony when you have the entire Democrat establishment and the progressives and all of the pearl-clutching media Karens who freaked out and said, Donald Trump called Haiti an S-hole. How could he call that country a crap hole? And then you had all of the late-night funny men wear T-shirts that Haiti is already great. It's so wonderful and amazing and it's awesome. Now if you send Haitians back, they're all going to die? That sounds kind of like a crap hole to me.
And I just came back from a rally with 1199 as I stood alongside a number of Haitian New Yorkers who are concerned about what this means for their status.
Wouldn't they just be New Yorkers? Why the Haitian New Yorkers? Is it because they have a citizenship to another country? Again, they didn't emigrate here permanently. This was a temporary protected status thing. And a lot of them who came to the United States, Haiti wasn't even their last stop. They were over in South America or Central America where they'd been living for 5-10 years. Several of the Haitian immigrants, or well, temporary protected status people, came over during that term from Australia. What?
In our city. And frankly, this city, the one that we love, is one that has been built by so many from so many different parts of the world.
So I love this. So I was originally told that Haiti was super great. And then if all of these Haitian people in New York and across the country with temporary protected status, if they're so super great and they're responsible for building New York and LA and the entire United States, then shouldn't sending the super great builder, you know, Bob the Builder and his family back down to Haiti, shouldn't that make Haiti even better?
And that includes our Haitian brothers and sisters, our Syrian brothers and sisters. And we stand here ready to be in solidarity with all of those who are concerned by today's decision. And beyond just language of solidarity, actions of solidarity.
Actions.
Now, what that means when it comes to our city is if you are worried about what this means for your status, if you're worried about what this means for your family, I would encourage you to call our Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs hotline. And you can do so at 1-800-354-0365.
Now, there is already a question on whether or not, in this particular instance, the immigration hotline at New York, if they advise the Haitians what to do, that could be violating federal law. So I've said this on the show before, and there's been some confusion on what local law enforcement has as a responsibility when it comes to federal immigration law. So does local law enforcement have the responsibility by law to enforce federal immigration law or like enforce certain federal statutes? Not necessarily, no. But what local law enforcement is not allowed to do is advise individuals in how to bypass, circumnavigate, or escape federal law. That is very, very, very illegal. Whether you're a city, whether you're a state official, whether you're a local cop, or whether you're a bureaucrat in Mamdani's administration, you can't do that.
Again, that's 1-800-354-0365. Now, many of you know this is a city of 8.5 million people. More than 3 million of us were born elsewhere. I'm one of them.
All right, and then he complains and he gives his little sanctuary speech. We got to bring the radio crew back in just one more time, and then we get to just the open communist stuff, and then the response, because, oh boy, here come the fires. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Everybody wants to rule the world is, I'd say, pretty appropriate here. So Zohran Mamdani, again, not escaping the allegations, Mr. Breadlines. Again, very, very open, the warmth of collectivism, dude. He's out here. He's ready to go. Why? Because the rent board of New York City, at his prompting, voted to freeze rents for rent affected, so certain rent regulated properties. Certain properties the New York City government has rent regulatory ability over, some they don't. And this was the response by the Democrat socialists in the room as soon as the committee elected to freeze the rent over all of the rent-regulated properties for 2 years. Wow, it sounds pretty popular. Gee whiz, wow, I mean, freezing the rent. And then, of course, Mamdani does what he always does. He comes out and he kind of gaslights people into suggesting that all rents of all properties have been frozen. He kind of suggests it. And then if he can't overtly say it, he'll frame it in a way that makes it sound as though he's done like the most wonderful and glorious thing, and the other stuff is just out of reach and to finish. Here's Mamdani with a little freezer commercial ad to kind of brag about it.
New York, the Independent Rent Guidelines Board just froze the rent.
I love that, the Independent Rent Guidelines Board. Yeah, I like that. That's because they're so totally independent. Sure.
That means if you're one of the more than 2 million New Yorkers who lives in a rent-stabilized apartment, your rent's going to be frozen next year.
Oh, wow. Rent's going to be frozen next year. That sounds amazing. Boy, I certainly can't see how that's going to cause any problems. Hey, what happened the last time this was tried? You mean like in the 70s when they had to stop broadcast of the World Series between New York and LA to show coverage of people setting fire to their apartments to collect on the insurance money? Uh-oh.
That is a live picture, and obviously a major fire in a large building in the South Bronx region of New York City. That's a live picture, and obviously the fire department in the Bronx have their problem. My goodness, that's a huge blaze.
So they covered this like 4 more times during that World Series match. So in the 1970s, as many of you know far better than I do because you likely lived through this disaster, a gigantic percentage of all housing stock in the South Bronx was burned to the ground by landlords who made more money off of the insurance than the rent. Because it turns out if you just artificially, magically freeze the rent in one place and say, this is a fair price, it turns out that what communists have never figured out is not only does that remove any and all incentive to maintain or to build or to innovate or do anything, but just declaring something set at a certain price will inevitably offload the cost in other areas of the local, of the state, and of the national economy. And what's my data? What's my source for this? Every single time this has been tried in economic history, period. No exceptions. No ifs, ands, buts, or coconuts. So a strong hoot full of applause. So producer Daniel got a couple of pieces of data here. So on this 2.3 million renters, in this of 2.3 million total rental properties, I should clarify, 43% of them are rent stabilized. So almost just under half of all New York City rentals are rent stabilized. 10% of those are subsidized affordable housing. 1% are very, very strictly rent controlled, but that's now been expanded, of course, because there are several that are rent stabilized. And then 43 to 45% are unregulated market rate units. So that 43 to 45% is going to skyrocket in price because, yes, owning or renting in New York City was already so cheap to begin with. So of the 1.27 non-luxury New York City rentals, 80% of those, again, because the people who are going to be looking after rent stabilization are those who are not looking to get the penthouse apartment overlooking the Central Park, right? Not the fancy apartments from, you know, the H.E. Pennypacker and Seinfeld, all right? No, I'm afraid not. 80% of those rent stabilized. 18% of the non-luxury rentals in New York City are in subsidized programs, and 1 to 2% are still under that classic rent control. And I bet you can guess what are the 1 to 2% that are currently in the absolute worst condition. So the rent stabilized units that Mamdani's, again, you heard himself, 1 million is what that rent board passing applies to. That's truly insane. That's some truly insane stuff. But never fear, because the hypocrisy of his own crew, and the hypocrisy, it matters less and less because people do expect it. But one of his little communist darlings, because she refuses to say she's not a communist. In fact, openly campaigning for it, according to the New York Post here. Darializa Avila Chevalier, the winner of the Democrat primary in one of the districts that unseated the chair of the Hispanic caucus in Congress, Little Miss Communist. It turns out that she, who according to the New York Post, has a lot of old deleted tweets where she reposted messages calling for the suspension of rent and mortgage payments and the seizure of all properties from landlords. So that's just like open communism right there. Her father is a landlord and rents his Miami condo for $1,750 a month because
well, how the turntables.
Incredible. I love it. I mean, seriously, because of course, So speaking of like really embarrassing hypocrisy, and because it's more than just these people, you know, Chevrolet here, Chevalier, isn't going to be running for the presidency anytime soon. I hope and pray to God. There are others who are further along in the polls right now. So we've got like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's not really as exciting and youthful and, you know, in there anymore. Of course, every time she gets up in front of the country, she says really stupid things like the accounting firm Deloitte set Cleveland on fire in West Virginia. You know, Cleveland, West Virginia. Or when she said that, oh, thank goodness we finally have breathable water and drinkable air. Or said that Venezuela was south of the equator. You know, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, she's one of the contenders, likely, to announce a candidacy for the presidency in the 2028 election. Kamala Harris is back and exciting. Very, very fun, you know. And then, oh boy, oh howdy, you've got Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, he's the front runner, right? Radio crew, we're going to catch you guys later. We're going to continue on the live stream, youtube.com/Daily Signal. We'll catch you guys on Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. So old Gavin Newsom, used to be the front runner and thinks America needs to be California. Well, Gavin Newsom, it turns out, is just not left-wing enough for this radical, very pro-violence, pro-Islamist, pro-LGBTQ plus 2IA, pro-open socialist, communist revolutionary takeover. Like, he's not left enough for him. Because he said things before like, oh, we just need a little bit of a little bit of something. And so he released a video. Again, he's just so openly getting ready to run for the presidency. He's not even hiding it anymore. And this is a guy, by the way, who criticized Ron DeSantis back in the Biden administration for wanting to run for president, but not having the balls to announce his candidacy. Now Gavin Newsom is doing, at least according to Gavin Newsom's critiques, the exact same thing. But anywho, so Gavin Newsom, he's so desperate now, right here, that he has released a video that he is being ruthlessly mocked by just everybody for, which is a very great sign when you head into an election season. Why? Because Gavin Newsom simultaneously, as a popular meme account named Jarvis _best over on X said, he says, like simultaneously, and this is kind of like a paraphrasing here, he's a liberal, a progressive, a moderate centrist, he's Donald Trump, and he's a communist. He said, quote, this guy's having a hell of a freshman year in college, finding himself. So Gavin Newsom trying to be anything and everything to everyone in his latest almost a campaign video. Enjoy.
It's time for a national billionaires tax and a new social contract. Think about this, just 10% of people in this country own 2/3 of the wealth. A 30-year-old, for the first time in American history, is not doing better than his or her parents.
As a reminder, just as we were talking about kids and parents, one of Gavin Newsom's kids is like very, very much on the right and despises his dad because he says, you know, like he doesn't actually do anything whatsoever to help my financial situation or to have prepared me to be successful, which is, you know, funny, enjoyable there. Also, as a reminder, you notice he'll say billionaire. He's going to say millionaire's tax because that would include him. Huh? In fact, what's the net worth here? Let's see. Gavin Newsom, net worth. Let's see if he's a tens of millionaire or a hundreds of millionaire. Gavin Newsom's net worth is estimated, according to Investopedia, between $20 and $30 million. And then his wife is also worth a big chunk. And that state, oh, it's totally for diapers, wink, money nonprofit lady is also worth quite a bit. So anyway, we'll let Mr. Don't tax the tens of millionaires, just the billionaires guy continue.
That's a 5-alarm fire.
You would know a lot about 5-alarm fires, wouldn't you, Gavin?
American wages have stood still, and the costs across the spectrum, cost of living, have skyrocketed.
Hey, where are the costs of living most expensive here in the United States, other than New York? Tell me, where? Other than in New York, what state has the highest cost of living? And just, you know, out there, let's do a little spitballing. What state are you the governor of?
The system is fundamentally broken. The federal tax code, the corporate tax code, and the inheritance tax code seem to be written for a different set of Americans. It's time for an economic reset, a true minimum tax on billionaires that, well, ensures the people at the very top pay at least the tax rate their own workers pay.
I love it. I love it so much. Again, in the top tax brackets, the taxable income is higher. Again, the issue, and Donald Trump pointed this out back in 2016, there are loopholes that people like Gavin Newsom have fought to keep in the tax code. So that, for example, if you found an LLC and then you buy a bunch of stuff for that LLC that you probably would have bought anyway, and then you write that off as a taxable expense, you can count that as a loss for your LLC, and that counts as a write-off against your taxes. In many states, it's that simple. Now, there are some of us who don't, take that advantage because that's kind of weird. And sorry, to clarify on something I said earlier, it's not New York who is the most expensive in the country. It is Hawaii, the highest cost of living. But number 2 is still California. So, of course. Anyway, we'll let him continue. He thinks he's on a roll here.
We also should end this tax-free lifestyle loan. This is the gimmick that allows the ultra-wealthy to borrow against their stock portfolios while reporting no taxable income.
Now, let's see. Gavin Newsom did so happen to default on the $20 billion COVID debt to the federal government. That New York Post story came out in January of 2026, according to New York Post author Bruce Bielowski. So you shouldn't just be taking free loans from the government or whatever he's talking about there, actually took a $20 billion loan from the government and then defaulted on it. So we took a free loan, just took it and ran.
We also have to rewrite those inheritance rules so that the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in human history, estimated by, be $124 trillion that will be changing hands, doesn't lock in a permanent American aristocracy of inherited wealth.
Again, and I've heard this before from a lot of angry socialists. It is not your right because there is an individual who has worked their entire life for a certain amount of funds. It is not your right to go in because they have died and then take from that which they have worked for to leave for their children. That's the right of a parent, is to give to their children. An inheritance tax is immoral and evil. The idea that you get, I thought this was, you can't steal from family. Oh, you're stealing from families. It's terrible. No, it is truly ridiculous. And it just so happens that you have individuals like Gavin Newsom who have previously endorsed policies for certain people to funnel money around and escape those very taxes he's advocating for.
Time as well to return to the pre-2017 corporate tax rates, and time to close those offshore loopholes once and for all. And as AI reshapes the country, every American should own a piece of the future it builds through a national public equity fund.
All right, there's the nationalization thing. And I don't like this no matter who it's from. There's a weird brand of the populists over on the right who are advocating for this as well, that the American people deserve a portion of Intel, and they deserve a portion of U.S. Steel, and they deserve a portion of AI, and they deserve a portion of, no, you don't. You didn't build it. If you want to invest in it, you go invest in it. The idea that the American people and the U.S. government who historically has made zero good business decisions, zero, all of the sudden, like, clearly we need to, nationalize industries. Show me the countries in which the nationalization of industries produced success. By all means, the nationalization of an entire industry. So far, no takers.
Trickle-down economics, it's been a, nearly 50-year experiment that has failed. Record corporate profits flowed into stock buybacks and executive compensation. It's time to...
In the time span, the 50-year time span that he's complaining about, trickle-down economics, which again, just the left-wing criticism, it's not actually how that works. But in that time span of what he's calling trickle-down economics here, the United States lifespan of the average individual has increased exponentially. The standard of living has increased exponentially. The true poverty rate in the United States is so low. Starvation in this country does not exist. Let me repeat that. Starvation in this country does not exist. There is electricity everywhere. Every single American owns a pocket-sized computer that can access anything and everything. And yes, the internet itself also being free if you go to a library, a McDonald's, a Starbucks, etc. The idea that Reaganomics has failed the United States is truly, patently, and explicitly retarded.
Stop pretending otherwise. We're nearing the 250th anniversary of this country's revolution. The system the American founders built, well, was designed to prevent the concentration of power in a few hands. But we've allowed that
So here we go. So the founding fathers, they designed the economy not to grow privately. So as a quick reminder, it was the Roosevelt administration who started bringing up antitrust stuff. The original country's founders, the founding fathers, did not at all talk about breaking up companies and seizing wealth. That was not a thing. And in fact, it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt who went around seizing gold from people. No, that's not. Again, the money that people believe that Elon Musk is essentially Spain from the 1600s. So when the 50 people wonder this, so if Spain colonized so much of the New World, then why wasn't Spain like bigger and more successful and flourishing and amazing? And the reason is because Spain believed in this retarded mercantilism style of government, in which there was a preeminent belief that all of the money that existed in the world was a fixed thing, and therefore who controlled the money in like a number sense controlled the world. It's actually kind of a pre-Marxist belief, just as retarded. And so Spain, when there was gold that was brought back over to Spain, literally put it in large rooms and did nothing with it. They didn't build any public works. They didn't allow people to invest their money. And so England, after 1588 especially, rocketed past the Spanish because, see, the English invented the idea of people being able to invest money. That came in England. Not just the East India Trading Company. They were all different manners of companies that weren't even like factory production product organizations. They were simple collective private enterprises where people could invest by part in major products that would later go on to colonize the entire world and bring forth industry and medicine and ethics that weren't child sacrifice and a whole list of other things. So not only is Newsom wrong, not only is Newsom retarded, not only is Newsom embarrassing himself, but he's trying to wrap it around in the end to this like fake code of patriotism that not even Karl Marx tried to argue.
Concentration happened anyway, slowly and in plain sight over the course of decades and decades. But
see, that's the thing. Oh, it's slowly amassing. Elon Musk is not like Spain, who just hoarded its wealth and then died. See, Elon Musk takes it and then invests it in things and starts other businesses, like a lot of individuals in the investing market do. It turns out that the venture capitalism, which is the super duper scary, people invest. It turns out that a lot of these organizations and people who invest their money then fuel further businesses. It's one of the reasons why Americans were glued to Shark Tank, for example. You would go before a group of very wealthy people who knew things about the insides of industries, and you'd say, behold, sharks, this product that I have that's going to do cool stuff. And then Kevin O'Leary would say, why would I sell that? And then you'd have to argue it. You got to see it in action. And some of them failed and some of them didn't. The stupidity on display on grown men who are supposed to know more than many others because of their upbringing, their education. Just like Tom Steyer, Mr. Super Billionaire, couldn't buy himself a California election, Gavin Newsom just lying his pants off by just trying to smarm and charisma his way through it all, it's not going to work because the average American with common sense does in fact see directly through this.
We can reverse it. We can reverse it together. It's time to democratize the American economy to save our democracy.
Yeah, so great. So what do we have? We have super communist Gavin Newsom now, who is still relying on the fake term trickle-down economics, which does not work. And how do I know it isn't working? Because this is what Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries keep saying on repeat, and we all know how well they're doing. So that's stellar. Now, Gavin Newsom is also joining the socialists and the far Marxist folks, because it's time to pack the courts, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. The Supreme Court says that you got to follow the law. And so Gavin Newsom says, well, it's just time to corrupt the Supreme Court, I guess.
So you're talking about expanding to 13, and it's interesting. I mean, it is a great historical, and people forget it. Last time it was done again was under Lincoln. There's no constitutional constraints on.
The first thing that needs to happen is court reform and court expansion.
Yeah, look, you're getting me closer to your point of view, and you challenged me. I know we were talking. I was on your pod down in LA a few months ago, and this notion of 13, and then just looking at the district courts as that framework, sort of anchor the old school, the ember of a traditional,
I really want to know who's doing his history lesson stuff. Seriously, I would love to know. He's like, oh, well, actually, we would, by packing the Supreme Court, we would really be going back to like a traditional method. I would say my brother in Christ, but yeah, that's definitely not true. My dude, John Jay, one of the most famous judicials of this country, has like a 12.5-page rant about why the Supreme Court of the United States should never under any circumstances be expanded, and also why the federal court system should probably be kicked right in the nads. John Jay, let's see. Oh yeah, one of the founding fathers. So no, honey, sweetie baby. Who's giving you these history lessons you're making up, like Sean Spencer on Psych?
For a guy who recognized the urgency of the moment with Prop 50, and in fact, the only Democratic state to have successfully redrawn its maps ahead of 2026, that is what I think is the natural evolution.
God bless
for somebody
you.
like you.
I'm with you. I'm done.
That's just real special. I also, man, I didn't think the standard for podcasters was high to begin with, but yikes. Now, is there actually any pushback? Because I said both parties are fracturing. There really is. And Hakeem Jeffries is struggling. A lot of Democrats are struggling. I told you that, for example, Democrats in Utah, in a major primary of a district that Kamala Harris carried by between 21 and 24 points. I believe 24 points, but I could be remembering the date and not the pointage. So I'm going to say 21 to 24 to be careful. Elected a moderately pro-life-ish Democrat instead of the socialist that the progressives really, really wanted to win. And in the rest of the middle of the country, I should say, although you have some individuals in rather coastal states as well. For example, Representative Tom Suozzi of New York's 3rd, who has now started leading a coalition of 10 representatives on the Democrat side of the aisle who are going to fight the socialists. So he came out with a post saying there's an old Union saying, "Don't mourn, organize." Okay. Anyway, he said, quote, "We need solutions to the very real issues facing Americans. And the extremes on the left and the right don't have them." I do love how even the moderate Democrats, who are trying desperately to fight against the socialists in the, leopards eating my face party who are now coming to eat my face, that those moderate Democrats also can't criticize the people on their own party without saying, also those wackos over on the right. As a quick reminder, when there are Republicans who are saying, hey, you know what? I really don't like making excuses for radical Islam. They don't stop from making fun, rightly so, of somebody like Tucker Carlson, whose, again, mental state is just in a blender, to suddenly turn around and say, oh, but also, who's really bad? The left as well. Because look, I know if you are on the right, you think that the left is radical. Duh. But if you're on the left and you're probably against Republicans, if you're criticizing the crazy rabid socialists, pretending that I have to stop and criticize the right as well, it really doesn't work. Anyway, he says, the left and right don't have them. That's why I'm building a coalition to demand common sense solutions that stay true to our traditional democratic values. I'm interested in hearing what these are because, as you know, I've said since the beginning, what are your policy proposals? Right now, the Republicans have an Achilles heel. They do. The Republicans have an Achilles heel. The Big Tent Party has not actually passed through the House and Senate a couple of measures that Americans are asking for, and a couple of things the Trump administration has done by executive order have really worked, and a couple of them, jury's kind of still out. Some of them great, some of them less so. And so if you are an opposition party member of the country right now, what you should be doing is saying, well, instead of Trump doing this, I would do this. But they can't push back on, for example, some of the tariffs because it was the Democrat Party's populist wing through the Bill Clinton 90s that was pushing the tariffs. So, oh no, well, their foreign policy maybe? Well, Democrats don't like, again, coming with the bunny son, the socialism, is all of the pro-Muslim insanity. They can't side with that. And even Obama's coming out and endorsing Zohran Mamdani-esque stuff. So what do the moderate Democrats have? What's their list of common sense approaches? What do you have? Nothing. They got nothing. Because the only place to go, the populists on the right, that are currently the populists on the right, a lot of them occupy Democrat social and economic policy from like the 70s through the 90s. And I have to say the 70s because like some of it's kind of like Democrat social policy, kind of, not really, but like in the 70s, way back then, into the 90s. And the foreign policy of like the 60s and the 70s of like, you know, war's like bad, man, like that kind of crap. So that's the left of the right. And then you have the traditional conservatives who are very moral focused and kind of on the Rubio team. And then you have the libertarians who are busy squawking in a corner about how a lot of their candidates turn out to be crazy. And then they all got behind Thomas Massie, who then turned out to be crazy. I feel bad for him. Those poor guys caring about the national debt, and just no one else in the country cares about it. And then you have, on the very last, you have the establishment, the technocracy, who are also struggling. But those are like 4 different sets of policy proposals. Democrats can't compete with that because other than rabid revolutionary communism, those are all of the policy proposals. Republicans have somehow taken both sides of the aisle. It's wild. So anyway, Tom Suzy of New York's 3rd, the common sense solutions that stay true to our democratic values. I asked our correspondent, Rebecca Downs, to break this down because this is breaking me. 13 members, so more than just the 10 that I'm going to cite here in a second. 13 members have signed on to this initiative, Promise to America. We're going to find out if this actually is the answer to the DSA. Now, Axios quoted him as saying it's time for the moderate Democrats to wake up to the Democratic Socialists of America wing. Hey, congratulations. You're a whopping decade late to the party. Way to go. You now have the political acumen of Nikki Haley. I made fun of Nikki Haley a lot back when like no one watched the show at all. And I used to make fun of her during the presidential primary of 24 because every other candidate would make a statement. And then after all of Nikki's advisors and donors and friends, and then her secondary advisor team would look at the situation and see everyone else comment on it. Then 3.5 weeks later, Nikki Haley would comment on a piece of news 4 weeks old and say what everyone else was already saying. So that's basically what's going on here, except it's really worse and it's more embarrassing. Although it could be a serious fracture to the party. So posting a clip from his own appearance on Fox News, here's Representative Tom Suzy. Here you go. Here's the Democrats' response to the DSA.
Moderate Democrats are making a commitment to American values, strong borders, and patriotism.
Strong borders and patriotism. Okay, so right after the 2024 election, you had this entire group of Democrats that met in Virginia and said, hey, what if we went to a gun show? And what if we went to church? And what if we didn't burn the flag? And Ken Martin, the head of the DNC, literally and publicly disavowed them and went after them. But they're back now. All right. Strong borders and good old-fashioned American values, served family style at Golden Corral.
We're capitalist, not socialist. We believe in safety, not lawlessness. We're proud of America, not ashamed of it. We believe in fiscal discipline. And we...
Strong borders, capitalist, market values, safety, like supporting the police. Wait a minute. Bill, I don't think you're a Democrat.
We have to organize better. We can't just talk about it at cocktail parties. You can't just come on TV shows and make a speech. We have to organize. Healthcare is too expensive. Food prices are too expensive. Your gasoline prices are too expensive. Let's work on the problems that really affect people's lives, and let's build a coalition of people that want to work together under some traditional values.
Please do, because we all love this country. Most of us love this country.
All right, and then all right, so the values, the traditional stuff. So what's going to happen? What's actually going to happen to these? And Rebecca tells me that these 10 current congressmen and women, and then I guess 3 candidates, here they are. So you have Tom Suzy of New York. He's one of the co-leaders. Number 2, Adam Gray of California. He's another co-leader. You have Josh Gottheimer. He's from New Jersey. Susie Lee of Nevada. Don Davis of North Carolina. I have no idea how to pronounce that first name. Vicente Gonzalez Jr. of Texas. Laura Gillen of New York. Janelle Bynum of Oregon. Kristen McDonald Rivet of Michigan. And Maggie Goodlander of New Hampshire. Those are the 10 Democrat Congress people who are going to stand up. And apparently the candidates here are Marlene. Oh, there's another. We've got more. That's right. Now it's up to 15. This is very exciting. So now you've got, in addition, I guess, well, we'll find out here. So we have Marlene Gallen Woods, who's running for Arizona 1. Bobby Pulido, running for Texas 15th. Jessica Killen, nice, running for Colorado's 5th. Paul Berenger, running for North Carolina's 13th. And Jamie Ager, running for North Carolina's 11th. Yeah, you could probably see a pretty decent fracture. I'm thinking of several Democrats. The young man who, well, I don't know if he's a young man, who won in the primary in Utah. Again, who's more of a pro-life-ish kind of Democrat. I'm sure on his way out, you might see Golden up in Maine join the list. They keep adding names. This will split the party. Because Republicans can kind of get behind closed doors and say, you know what? I know that we have our differences. And I know that there's some real issues here, but right now we actually kind of have to do a few things. It's what we're seeing right now in real time in the Senate. And I cannot stress to you how crazy this is for me. You know how strange it is to see like Republican representatives dunking on Mike Lawler for complaining about Trump ending temporary protected status for Haitians, the representative from New York, the moderate Republican sometimes. And they're like other Republican representatives who are dunking on him. And I mean dunking on him like the Harlem Globetrotters up against the Generals. I mean, it's bad. It's so strange to see. Like you're actually, and then on the Democrat side, they're just squibbling and bickering, and they're getting further and further apart by the day. It's a wild time. I mean, you even have Hakeem Jeffries now playing defense against comments made by Elisa Slotkin. I mean, Elisa Slotkin. Remember, she was going to be there. Remember after Trump got out and he gave his State of the Union style addresses right after he was elected? And he concluded, and that was the famous speech. Like Trump's like, I could cure cancer. I could do many things. I could paint a picture by Bob Ross and they still wouldn't stand and clap and cheer. That famous one. They get this senator from Michigan, Elisa Slotkin. She gets up there with her little Karen Bob haircut and she's like, hey, I'm the new fresh face of the Democrat Party. And it went over like an anvil. Well, now she's calling out Hakeem Jeffries. This is just a beautiful time. Here you go. And then Wolf Blitzer over at CNN forces Hakeem to respond to it. What a time to be in American politics. Here you go.
I'm saying if people can't understand that the game has changed. I mean, this is you. You're the sports guy.
She's talking to Stephen A. Smith.
If people can't understand that the game has fundamentally changed and they can't adapt, then they need to let others lead.
So what do you say to Slotkin about that? Are you the right person to continue to lead the Democrats in the House? And if, in fact, the Democrats become the majority in the House, are you ready and you think you're likely to be elected Speaker?
Well, listen, what's in front of us right now is we got to do everything to take back control of the House of Representatives. That's actually the moment that we're in. And
I mean, Michael Scott could rally the troops. You've got about the mental acuity here of Michael Scott, and dude, you are bombing this. It's bad. We're talking Jeb Bush saying clap in 2015. That's how bad this is.
House Democrats have been very clear that we are going to continue to relentlessly focus on making our case to the American people.
Oh, hey, the gas prices, Chiron is back. I just noticed, or I should say they're fonts. That's what they're called over on CNN. I just think it's funny. Whenever the prices dip lower, that little gas prices font disappears, and then it comes back again whenever it goes up. That's just for free. That's a little bonus for media analysis there for you there.
Drive down the high cost of living, fix our broken healthcare system, and clean up corruption. I have no idea what Elisa Slotkin was talking about.
I have no idea what she's talking about. Okay. All right. I love that.
Wow. The land of make-believe.
I love it. This is fun. I'm having fun. Are you having fun? If you don't laugh through this stuff, you'll cry because it's incredible. So speaking of the alliances that once held strong that are shattering, my personal favorite Remember the whole Queers for Palestine thing? Remember the old Queers for Palestine, shenaniganry? Ah, yes. Well, it just so happens that what some expected to just be an enduring alliance between the LGBTQ plus 2IA and things, which again is expressly haram in Islam, which is also making its big, triumphant march across the United States, along with the socialists and the angry racists. Well, that alliance was never really going to hold on. So now, because Seattle is Seattle, the World Cup match tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern has been decreed as a Pride night. So they're going to, fly some rainbow flags and do a bunch of the gay stuff because, if there's one thing that Islamic nations love, the same places where companies, even during the height of the Pride times, would not fly or would not change their, Middle Eastern social media profiles to their little gay Pride version. Like, everyone understands it's probably not the thing that you do there. You can disrespect Christians all you want, but again, if you disrespect Islamic countries, they'll bomb your house and your family. And then will moderate Islamists actually criticize it? Well, they're not really Muslims. Nope. Everyone knows this very common sense stuff. So anywho, the Iranian and Egyptian teams are set to play tonight, and they're very, very unhappy about it. They filed a formal complaint with FIFA and said, we do not want to play on the whole gay thing. Now, to be clear, I think it should be fair, just to be, very upfront and friendly here. Marijuana is also totally legal and fine. And so, I guess with the theme of in Islam, only the gays get stoned, that works here. I'm just gonna be fair. Anyway, though, so now FIFA has released a statement, and they're just trying so hard to straddle the fence here, which is also kind of grossly apropos in this conversation. So FIFA, has now confirmed that the rainbow flags will be allowed inside the stadium for Egypt versus Iran in Seattle, despite objections from both teams over the LGBT pride events taking place around the match. And this is my favorite quote. FIFA stressed that the celebrations are organized by Seattle's local committee and are not a part of the World Cup. Please don't bomb us. Just incredible. Just hilarious. I truly hope, by the way, for all of the gay nonsense, I hope every drag queen in the country is in that stadium this evening and is as obnoxious as possible. You and I know how obnoxious they are. Please, I want to see the response. I think it would be funny. I do. I think it would be incredible. I very, very much enjoy it. I think this is great for all. I hope both teams have a horrible time. Because as we, as we kind of cross the stream, there have been so many aggravating lawsuits and difficulties that we have dealt with here at home, so many frustrations. I think this is, I don't know, there's something about me that really finds this truly hilarious. So as a quick note here, for these last 250 years, America, unlike some places in the world, has been a bastion of freedom. And as we look ahead to the next 250, we're reminded that freedom is ours to defend. Today, the Alliance Defending Freedom, again, I'm very, very picky about my sponsors. They stand in courtrooms across the country to protect those freedoms that we cherish: life, free speech, religious freedom, and parental rights. These freedoms are at the core of who we are as a nation. They must be preserved. And I've seen them preserving this in the courtroom on cases and stories that I have covered, defending school counselors that refused to lie to parents about transgenderism and things, for example. So the Alliance Defending Freedom, that crew, they're approaching a critical fiscal year-end fundraising deadline. I highly encourage you to support them like I do. Your support helps the ADF defend these freedoms so they may endure for many years to come. Every dollar that you give will be doubled, which is incredible, thanks to a special matching grant while these funds last. So visit joinadf.com/Tony or text TONY to 83848. Or excuse me, 83848 to give today. That's joinadf.com/Tony or text Tony to 83848. So huge thanks. All right. Now here at the end, alas, we will finally dive into just a smidgen, just a piece of that good old fashioned mail time.
Mail Time on the Tony Kinnett Cast.
All right, let's dive in to a little bit of that good old mail time. If you want to throw some kind of a question in for mail time, here is how you do it. You head over to the link to the Discord in our description. You click on that link, and then over there is a beautiful mail time channel just for you to get us, some of those questions so that we can answer them here. Just a little bit of it, because I know, it's 8:30 on a Friday night, so we won't keep you too late, I promise. Let's dive into these because, again, every show's got a little bit of a mail question. Also, a huge thanks to those who've given super chats during this show or on yesterday's show. Really, really appreciate the kindness of y'all doing that. You don't have to, but we are very, very grateful. All right, let's dive in here. So some of the questions. Would I like to see the Trump administration grant temporary protected status to the United Kingdom on grounds of failing to protect the native population from the predations of unlawful immigrants? I think the epic progressive meltdowns would be worth it. That's from Steve. Maybe in a different manner. I think that the United States, if we're going to grant temporary protected status, it should be for Christians, Jews, Druze, some Sikhs, again, some parts of the world culturally different than others, from those who are victims of Islamic terror. I think that would be good. I think it should be very, very, very sparing because we have a lot of people who are taking up housing. And do I think that's the only issue with housing in this country is that like illegal immigrants or temporary migrants are taking up housing? I don't think that's all of it at all. I think that is a part of it. Or I don't think that's all of it, at all. But I do believe that it is a significant part of it. And so bringing a bunch of people in, yeah, I don't think so. Now, should there be an easier legal immigration pathway? For example, those from what were predominantly Christian countries who have been taken over by Islamic radicalism? Absolutely. I think that should be an option. But let's get kind of the mess that we have at home fixed first. Next excellent question. Vice President, from Roy Solberg. Do you think that we could actually see President Trump name Marco Rubio vice president? Remember, Donald Trump said if it went badly, he was going to blame Vance. So on that one, Rubio, well, let's get to the Vance part first. Easier to go backwards on this one. So from Fox, Peter Ducey pitched a question to the president and said, hey, so if this whole MOU thing goes really well, you're going to take credit for it. And then if it goes really bad, are you going to blame Vance? Kind of a leading question. And then Trump kind of chuckled and said, yes, that's actually quite a pretty decent idea. I'll look into it. Do I actually think that he's going to get rid of Vance? First of all, I don't think you can dismiss the vice president of the United States. He'd have to resign. I don't see any reason that Vance would do that. I really don't. And then there are some really good things that Vance is doing, by the way. I think that Vance would probably be reassigned to come back home. And again, as Rubio stated, we both serve at the pleasure of the president. What the president orders our foreign policy team to do, we do. And to his credit, when Vance is told to do something or argue on something for foreign policy, he does it. He does indeed. So I very much doubt that we would see the vice president replaced with Rubio. And to be honest, I think that would be a death knell for Rubio. The vice presidency is historically and constitutionally a useless position. The vice president does not have the authority to call the Senate in and like call him back and hold votes. He does not have that authority. That is a myth. That's not how that works. He can break ties in some cases. So again, the vice president can break ties in some cases, and he can become president if the president dies. That's it. Or is 25th Amendmented. Those are your choices. So like Rubio's got a lot of hats that he's wearing. So far, when people see him wearing those hats and doing good things, next, I mean, like he gets to do some other things like that. So, and yeah, I think one of the comments right now, it's still too early to worry about presidential chances. And I will very much kind of go to bat for anyone there. Now you have people like Gavin Newsom who are shooting every one of his feet as many times as he can. But I mean, again, there's a lot of time before we actually get there. And a lot of the situation in the Middle East is not over yet. A lot of people have decided it's all over. But I've seen a lot of people declare things over just to see things completely flip and turn around immediately. So that said and aside, next question here. What's the reason that people are so eager to get the Save America Act through? I know it's a good bill, this is according to Jacob, but will it make such a big difference on election results? Probably not for the midterms. But that's also not the point. I said this on yesterday's show. The Save America Act has some core voter ID requirements that are very popular with Americans. Like only citizens can vote, and you have to prove it to be on voter rolls for federal election stuff. That's a very, very good thing. Now, there's some other stuff that's like kind of glued in there that I don't really think, like refusing, for example, one part of the Save America Act says that children cannot be given access to like transgender treatments and medication. I said treatments and medication. That's a very good thing. I think that is a very good thing to pass. Should that be in the Save America Act? No, I hate omnibus bills, period. I do. I hate omnibus bills. It should only be about election stuff so that it can't get thwarted. I think it should just be about election stuff. It shouldn't be a budgetary grant thing. Now, why are Americans so passionate? Because they are seeing, again, as Representative Scott Perry of Pennsylvania pointed out, Americans have seen the crud and the gross and the awful. They don't like it. And so they want it passed. Americans really, 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 they want one big thing out of President Trump's first term, or excuse me, President Trump's first 2 years of his second term before the midterms. Has Trump, other than shutting the border, have we actually seen, like, for example, mass scale deportations that everyone was expecting? Not necessarily. And a lot of that has to do with federal judges. I think better articulating on like the need for Americans to actually see those kind of wins probably comes from, Rob Bluey, president of the Daily Signal. And, you know, over on the media side of things today, here he was making this particular case on the deportation matter.
Donald Trump promised to carry out the largest mass deportation in our country's history. The fact of the matter is, if you look at the first year of the Trump administration, they did not hit the mark on the president's own promise. And now the Mass Deportation Coalition is saying that they need to deport up to 1 million illegal immigrants this year.
Are you bringing this up because you're saying this was a win they needed?
Yes, I'm saying that Donald Trump is, if that's the promise that he was going to deliver on, and that was a central theme of his 2024 campaign, these victories at the Supreme Court certainly put him on the pathway to getting back on track when it comes to carrying out that. Now, we may disagree on whether or not that's the policy the United States should carry out. I just happen to say, as a conservative and as somebody who
You're happy
was
about
animated,
this ruling.
Absolutely. I think that these rogue judges...
So, True. Case well made. So that brings us forward to kind of the next question here. I do like a couple of really, really good question. Moving forward, and I think there are a couple of really good questions here. Tony, do you know if it was Tony that suggested the RNC won't back anyone who won't vote for the SAVE Act or remove those who are leaving from any committees that they're on? I haven't heard that at all. I haven't. I try to give you kind of all the details on the inside of what it is that's going on based on some of the things that we're fed, those details. I don't think that that's the case. I haven't heard it. Could it be true? Sure. Do I think that's happening? No. Why? Because John Thune, as the Senate Majority Leader, would have something to say about it. Has he threatened to withhold campaign funding from Susan Collins for not getting on board? Nope. So, that side, that side and said here. One question from Brett Johnson. I'm so sorry I didn't say this. I deeply apologize. What does to censure mean and why does it matter? So a censure is a very, very official form of rebuke. It is wildly embarrassing in politics to be censured. It is a sign of no confidence. It is something that will be cited by all manner of individuals in like the RNC and the donor class as like a vote of no confidence. It will be something, once someone is censured, it's essentially saying, hey, so for example, again, let us point out, let's pretend and have a nightmare for a second that I ran for the Indiana 6th Congressional in 2028. And I ran and I was elected. And then the first thing that I do when I get into office is I violate like 15 different laws. You will not initially hear a lot of representatives in the House that will criticize me by name on my side of the aisle. You won't really hear like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson say, well, Tony Kinnett is, he's not passing this law that we want. Let's say I don't violate 15 laws. Let's just say I don't get on board and I also don't want to pass good legislation or whatever. That's my big crime. I'm doing the kind of stuff that John Thune is doing now. And Speaker Johnson probably wouldn't immediately get out and say, well, Tony Kinnett, he's kind of dumb and we don't like him. You wouldn't see a bunch of other Republicans in the House because there's kind of, you just don't really touch it. Once the official censure came down from the Indiana Republican Party and said, Tony, he's stupid, he's awful, and this is what we want him to do, that would be very good leverage for the rest of the House to put political pressure on me publicly. Because my own backers at that point, the own people that I'm claiming to represent, from Mike Nixon here, LOL. A censure has the impact of being kind of set in the hall during grade school. It is a very big public humiliation that's used as a pressure point. Humiliation matters. That's one of the reasons why this is going to be a wild equation here. This is one of the reasons why I am very much in favor of flogging as a criminal punishment. Because punishment should include an aspect of pain and an aspect of humiliation. That's important. That's why you rub your dog's nose in the mess. That's why a child is best served in a discipline, often by a spanking and in front of people. Not privately off back out necessarily by the woodshed. The humiliation and the pain are important. The pain is a psychological factor that actually creates change. It's Pavlovian. It is baked into our response as human beings. It is very scientifically minded. Number two, the humiliation sets the psychological process in motion of social consequences. It matters. It is truly something that creates change. So for Thune here, the censure is an aspect. He's already facing the pain and the humiliation from the American electorate. But for an establishmentarian, establishment people really don't like censorship. That's like the doom. There are some Achilles heels for establishmentarians and technocrats, and being chided by the Robert's Rules of Order is actually one of them, whereas a populace wouldn't care. They just say, okay, fine, censure me. I'll do it again. That kind of a thing. It does kind of matter. A scarlet letter? Yeah, kind of. Kind of indeed. Flogging. Haven't heard of that since the 1800s. No, in the state of Delaware, it is still legal to provide corporal punishment. It is. That's not some archaic old barbaric thing either. I will absolutely die on that hill. For example, for drunk driving, should absolutely be solved by a certain number of lashes. It should. You get caught drunk driving, you shouldn't go sit in federally funded or state funded timeout for 5 years. No. You should be given a couple lash strokes in the public square. And then it's done. It's pain, it's humiliating, and then you pay a fine of restitution. Makes sense. It really does. Absolutely. Fun. Let's see. Last question here. We'll go ahead and we'll do one more question. And we'll even throw it over to the YouTube crew here. Anyone have any good YouTube questions before we saddle on out for the weekend? I feel like one of you guys can actually throw, what do I think is going to happen? I'll let you guys come up with a really good question. While I do, there's one other question. What do I think is actually going to happen with those 10 Democrat voters who is now up to like 15? They will either be forced and bullied. They'll either be bullied until they're forced to kneel, and they end up picking up the DSA line, which is what Hakeem Jeffries is going to be forced to do. Just so you're aware, Hakeem Jeffries is a coward. He will eventually be forced to kneel. You're already seeing it right now. Again, Zohran Mamdani is more than happy to preside over crowds chanting, "You're next, you're next, you're next," at Hakeem Jeffries, as they did. I mean, again, please don't take my word for it. Here was the crowd chanting, "You're next," about Hakeem Jeffries. You're next, you're next, you're next. And he's already bowing the knee. Those other Democrats, they will either bow the knee or they'll leave the party. John Fetterman will absolutely leave the Democratic Party and at least be independent. That'll absolutely hurt him in the midterms. Absolutely. All right. Last little question here. Did you guys come up with any excellent, incredible questions here? Any stellar ones? Do you think this is the last one is from CE Will, Texas. This is a really good one. Do you think that we can enact the anti-communist legislation to keep this kind of stuff at bay? Yeah, you can, but it's even easier than you'd think. So for example, like the American communists back in the day, they didn't overtly state that they wanted to tear down the United States and burn it down with violence. Right now, the Democratic Socialists of America openly call for and endorse that. You are not allowed, as a United States citizen, the people's idea of what the First Amendment does and doesn't cover is just the most insane thing to me. You do not have the right, as a U.S. citizen, to go out and say, I stand in solidarity with a foreign enemy designated by Congress of the United States. You do not have a right to do that. You cannot aid and abet a foreign enemy of the United States. And if you do, that is treason. It only requires the federal government to enforce it. Now, because we're in the world of legalese, that means that you have lawyers who can stretch everything out for 3 or 4 years. The answer here is for federal judges to be impeached and there to be like an immediate trial and an immediate sentencing. And yeah, if you openly endorse and call for the open dissolution of the United States and our open insurrection-y against the country, you should be hanged. Because that's not free speech. Again, if you participate in a religion and you call for and endorse the slaughtering of your fellow American citizens for drawing a picture of your prophet, that's not freedom of religion. That doesn't count. Nope. The Constitution and federal law are not suicide pacts. That is the truth. The United States has never, ever, 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 ever actually carried that forward. And Ron Levy is quite correct in pointing out, the 1954 Communism Act. Indeed, there are several other acts on that. Several other indeed. All right, crew. We will catch you guys on Monday, unless major news breaks over the weekend, for a 4-show week, because we're not going to, hang out real close on the 3rd of July. Going to ask my producers to spend time with their family and take a day off before the 4th. So that said, on July 2nd, which will be our last show for the week next week, we are going to have a little bit of a celebration. The documentary for our Daily Signal crew, Sacred Honor, is releasing. So again, if you haven't seen it yet, it's incredible. Here's the trailer for that. We'll play it right before the end of the show.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights,
that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men,
deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends,
it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it,
and to institute new government,
laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form
as shall to them seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
For the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence,
we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes,
and our sacred honor.